Joshua Buatsi and Ricards Bolotniks square off this Saturday to top off week 3 of Matchroom's fight camp. In my opinion, this is a good next step for Buatsi. Bolotnik is a good, solid European level light heavyweight, and I think it'll be a good fight for Buatsi to continue his development under Virgil Hunter. Now, if this fight had come off the back of Buatsi's performance against Kalic, then I'd be leaning towards Bolotnik to beat Buatsi fairly comfortably. Only recently did I actually start to rate Buatsi. I felt that he was quite basic and methodical, and throughout his career I hadn't seen much growth in him since he medalled at the 2016 Olympics. In his last fight, however, against Dos Santos, I was very impressed. And now let's not get it twisted. Daniel Dos Santos was a very limited opponent and it was quite the mismatch. But it's undeniable that Joshua Buatsi showed a much improved understanding of the nuances of boxing. In particular, I was surprised to see Buatsi make use of effective feints to manipulate Dos Santos's position, also while baiting a reaction from Dos Santos. Also, Buatsi had much better defined positions and punching mechanics, and it just allowed him to subtly come off the center line, especially with a jab. And this, of course, lines up with generating maximum force and power in your punches, but also it keeps you a dynamic target, and you learn to marry your technique with the way that your body's supposed to move, and it just makes things flow a lot better. It's a lot more effective. And Buatsi, I felt, had been a little bit stiff, a little bit upright before that, and it looks like he's starting to loosen up now, at least in that last fight. And these are skills, though, that Bolotnik himself has. And at first glance, Bolotnik, he looks like a bit of, a rugged and slightly crude fighter. But upon closer inspection, there are actually quite a few subtle details that show Bolotnik is actually a quality fighter. He has a style that many would describe as jittery or herky-jerky, terms like that. And the reason for that is because Bolotnik is constantly shifting his weight back and forth from his left leg, his lead leg, to his back leg, his right leg. And what he does with that is, because he does it with good biomechanics, he's actually turning his body and changing which hand he can lead with. And now this threatens the opponent, of course, because you feint punches that way, but then you also, as I say, you change up which hand you can lead with, and that threatens the opponent from two sides. And if you can do that proficiently, you can then potentially set up a greater variety of power shots. And I think, speaking of power, I think Bolotnik, he is a better puncher than his record suggests. And from what I've seen of him, he actually seems to be quite a sharp counter puncher. So I think that's definitely a dangerous combination for any fighter, to have a power punching counter puncher in front of you, and he does apply somewhat effective pressure. So yeah, it's a very dangerous situation for many fighters. But overall, I'd give the edge in skill to Bolotnik, and I think that's probably just a result of his greater boxing experience. But I think Buatsi is clearly the more athletic and is fresher, less miles on the clock. And I think one such example of that is, I think out of 5 defeats, Bolotnik has been stopped 3 times. I think one of his stoppages came to Andreas Evangelou back in 2014. For those who don't know, Chris and Andreas Evangelou are 2 brothers who competed at about Southern area level. Nice guys. I met them when I was a teenager. I must have been like 14 years old. Nice guys, made time for the amateurs, but they are, I think it's fair to say they weren't the highest level operators. And this is someone who stopped Bolotnik back in 2014. Bolotnik was also stopped by Tabiso Machunu, but that was up at cruiserweight, and Machunu is, for at least a certain time, he was a top level cruiserweight. This guy he's a bit of a hidden gem, actually. He was, wasn't the most well-known fighter, but he was top quality. He had good skills, decent power. He always listed at 5'11", which, I mean, I've never seen him in person, but he looked tiny. He looked more like 5'7". So yeah, just a little bit of a tangent there, but Bolotniks has been stopped before. albeit once at cruiserweight, at least once at cruiserweight. I can't remember the record exactly. But I think he's on a bit of a roll right now. I know Bolotnik won the golden contract and I think won it quite decisively. But I just believe that Buatsi is, it's his time now, and he doesn't know how to lose, that old trope in boxing. And he is showing improvement, in my opinion, and I'd like to think, I wasn't high on Buatsi before, so I'm willing to give him more credit now that I'm actually starting to see him make those improvements. As for a prediction for this fight, I see Buatsi winning by stoppage in the mid rounds, probably 5 or 6. I think Bolotnik will put up a brave effort, and I'd be very surprised if he didn't land any shots. So I do think he's going to kind of get his own shots off and land some clean ones on Buatsi. But I think ultimately he'll probably just be overpowered. I think Buatsi, even though he's going to look to employ his skills, I think he will be matched by Bolotnik, and then Buatsi will probably have to bite down in his gum shield and grab the fight by the scruff of the neck and just kind of dog Bolotniks out a little bit and take the fight that way. And, as I was really trying to get a feel for Bolotnik, so I'd only seen him a couple times prior to the lead up to this fight. You get these kind of old man vibes from him, and it's you get the feeling he's been around the block. He's a bit of a veteran. He must be up there in age. There's actually only 3 years between Buatsi and Bolotnik, and that just completely threw me off. It's weird. Buatsi 28 to Bolotnik 31. It's just weird. You'd think that Bolotnik was like 10 years older than Buatsi, but no, only 3 years. So, yeah, makes you wonder what kind of things Bolotnik's seen in his life. But nevertheless, that is my prediction for this fight. Just to touch on the card as a whole, I think it's very, very dry. G-Man touched on this, and I have to agree with him. This is probably the weakest fight camp out of the entire series this year. I didn't see much of the first one. I saw bits and pieces, but after the Ben Granados fight fell through, my interest for that one kind of tanked. Last weekend, Fight Camp 2, I thought was very good. I think every fight ended in a stoppage other than the preliminary fights. So that was a good bit of entertainment. Whereas this is the only real fight that I'm like really anticipating, I'm excited for. Other than that, I don't even think I'm going to tune in for the rest of the card. Say I'm not a hardcore fan, I don't care. I'm going to find something better to do until this fight's on. So, yeah, hopefully it's a good fight. And I think it could be a dangerous one for Buatsi. Bolotniks is no slouch, but I do think that Buatsi gets it done around 5 or 6. And we'll move on to bigger and better things. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's discuss this fight. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next video.